Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a fascinating topic, an amendment proposed by Senator Ted Cruz during a Senate hearing. This amendment clarifies the voluntary nature of reporting demographic characteristics for employees involved in patent applications. It sparked a lively debate among the senators. First up, Senator Ted Cruz. He proposed that this amendment ensures employees understand that sharing their demographic information is completely voluntary. No one should feel pressured to disclose personal details unless they want to.
I'd like to call up my amendment OLL 21432. This amendment goes directly to the question that Senator Kennedy was raising, and both of the sponsors of this bill have repeatedly represented that participation would be voluntary, that it was not mandatory. What this amendment does is it makes clear that that's the case, and that it is the case for employees as well. So this amendment does two things. It, number one, says that an employer can't report on an employee's demographic characteristics without that employee's consent, that it's up to the employee whether that information will be reported. And then secondly, it says that the employer cannot take adverse employment action against the employee if he or she chooses to deny consent. And so this amendment, both of the sponsors have argued eloquently that this should be voluntary. Well, this amendment ensures it's voluntary not just for the CEO, but for the individual inventor or researcher.
Then things got interesting when Senator Mazie Hirono weighed in. She argued that the amendment was unnecessary because the bill already states that participation is voluntary. According to her, adding an amendment that reiterates this point is just extra and doesn't add any practical benefit.
Voluntary means voluntary. That's it. So it's very clear that no employer can force the employee who happens to be part of a patent application to disclose anything. That's voluntary. So your amendment, Senator, adds additional unnecessary requirements that have no practical benefit. Voluntary means voluntary.
If I could ask Senator Hirono what additional requirements that have no benefit?
Oh, the requirement to get an express consent
You just said it was
from
voluntary.
the individual.
But you just said it was voluntary. So
So why does there need to be an express consent if the employee doesn't, if the employee doesn't want to participate, disclose that information, doesn't have to do so?
How is something
Why is there a
voluntary
need
if
for
there's
an
not
express consent?
And is it an unnecessary protection to protect the employee against discrimination and an adverse employment action? Why is that unnecessary?
It's voluntary, so any employer who will take action against an employee based on something that is a voluntary action on the part of the employee, I would say that employee probably has some other kinds of actions to pursue.
Senator John Kennedy jumped in to support Cruz's amendment, emphasizing the importance of explicit consent. He was puzzled about why there would be any opposition to something that seems so straightforward.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Senator Kennedy and then Senator Leahy.
I think we have unity in confusion here. It's either voluntary or it's not. Now, and I'd like to vote for this if it's voluntary. But I don't see the harm in Senator Cruz's amendment. The holder of the patent either gives consent or she doesn't. Now, she has to give informed consent, I assume. That means they have to tell her it's voluntary. But I don't understand what we're arguing about here.
Senator Kennedy, the person who is involved gives consent by disclosing the information. That is consent.
But if I'm a patent holder.
This is not like some operation that you have to give informed consent on.
But
It's totally voluntary.
But you said, Senator, I'm really trying to understand why you're disagreeing with Senator Cruz's amendment. If it's voluntary, if I'm a holder of the patent, and you come to me and say, Kennedy, do you want to disclose? And I say, no. That's what Senator Cruz is giving me the right to do. And it would seem to me, if it's voluntary, as you say, and I believe you, Mazie, what's the problem?
The problem is that this amendment is not necessary. If the employee does not want to disclose that information as part of a patent application, where this information, by the way, is kept totally separate, that information is not given.
That's what
And
Fed
that is
say.
it.
That's what
That
Cruz
is
is saying.
it. That is the decision.
What's wrong with
So-
belt and suspenders?
Explicit consent is about being crystal clear that an individual is choosing to share their information willingly. It's not just a casual, yeah, sure, but a conscious decision. Senator Cruz pointed out that ensuring this clarity protects employees from potential discrimination or adverse consequences at work. After all, no one should face negative repercussions for choosing not to disclose personal information. Hirono argued that the amendment was redundant and unnecessary, since the bill already guarantees that participation is voluntary. She also mentioned that the demographic data collected would be kept confidential and separate from the patent examination process. The crux of the debate really came down to the interpretation of voluntary. Cruz and Kennedy felt that if the bill already does what the amendment proposes, then there should be no harm in adding the amendment for extra clarity. They wanted to make sure that the definition was clear-cut, leaving no room for misinterpretation. On the other hand, Hirono and others felt that the existing language was sufficient, and adding more could complicate things unnecessarily. And there you have it, a deep dive into the lively debate over Senator Cruz's amendment. This discussion sheds light on the importance of clarity and explicit consent, especially when it comes to sensitive information like demographic data. If you found this breakdown helpful and want to stay updated on more intriguing political debates, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you never miss out. As always, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.